Okay, good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021, and we're looking at the S&P 500 futures market. We're going to get started here with our pre-market analysis, although I do want to point out how well the levels worked yesterday. So remember, these levels we put on here, these blue dash lines, we have these on here. We plot them whenever there's relevant support and resistance levels. And I've been leaving them on the chart. And it's just really interesting to note how well, just looking at the blue lines, how well the market has reacted at those levels. In fact, we sold off yesterday and came right down to that 42.0350 and bounced, and then sold off right into 41.98, almost to the tick. Bounced from there, found support right around this 03 again, sold off again, bounced right off 95.50 and bounced around 98 and 95.50 for quite a while. And then this into the end of the day, bounced right off 98 again. And then we sold off and came all the way down to 92.25, which was one of our levels. Found some problems at 95.50. And so you get the picture. It just amazes me every time I see how well these levels work, especially when they've been plotted, sometimes a month ago or more. So just something interesting to note. So let's get going here with our pre-market analysis. We're going to jump to our ultra high time frames here and just see if anything has changed. Of course, our 3-month and our monthly are probably going to be irrelevant here, but we do want to point out that we did not have any signs of exhaustion on this May candle that closed, or I'm sorry, the 3-month candle that closed at the end of May here, looking pretty strong. And then, of course, the new candle can't say much about, right? So things just look pretty strong right now. Monthly, you definitely could see things kind of starting to go a little bit sideways here, but still beautiful doji there on that May monthly candle that just closed. And still have a lot of time for things to develop here on the new candle. So really can't say too much, even, looking at what's the RVI is saying. This all can change, over the next 4 weeks. But still looking strong, no signs of exhaustion, still holding that really strong trend line. You go to our weekly, and remember while this week was still developing, we said if we don't break the low here at 29.25, we're going to have a bullish indication. And sure enough, market ended up pushing all the way back up, closing close to where they opened. And then this new weekly candle from last week closed higher. And so the overall trend here looks like we are going to continue with the potential bullish push here, at least from a weekly perspective. Of course, we do have another few days here for this to finally close, and we'll get a clearer picture then. On our daily, we did have that bullish indication yesterday that we talked about, which was part of why we had a bullish bias into the open. That was because we had a daily along with a number of other time frames giving us a bullish indication, and just so happens that we pushed just a few points above the level we were looking to hold above, and then they sold off. So that was really a pretty clear picture yesterday. Once we could not hold above, and I forget what the actual level was, I think 12.25 or 12.20, I don't even remember now, but we had to hold above. We went up and then we sold off. Now, what I'm noticing here from a daily perspective is we actually got a bearish indication there on that push higher. So we pushed, we ended up coming all the way back down. Now, it was still a green candle or a blue candle if you look at my color scheme, but still looks pretty damn bearish there. So if we cannot get above the high we made yesterday at 42.30, we could potentially start to see some type of sell-off here, some type of correction. Remember, we don't have clear signs of exhaustion here from a weekly or a monthly perspective, but the daily is giving us some bearishness, which could lead to some type of larger correction. Now, right now, this candle really can't really say anything about the signal or the candle itself because we have, the next 10 hours for it to develop. But we do want to keep in mind that we have this, and I'll go ahead and mark it. somewhat of a bearish indication here off of the high we made yesterday and have this huge wick on that daily candle. So not necessarily a bullish case right now from the daily perspective. When we jump to our 4 hour, we did, and we mentioned this yesterday, how we did have a number of these time frames giving us somewhat of a bearish indication off the highs here. And so it doesn't matter if you look at this lower level or the previous peak here, we do have somewhat of a bearish case, but we have gotten the sell-off. So that could be all it is here, from 42.30 down to about 41.90, let's call it. So about 40 points. That's a pretty healthy pullback in this market. And so that could be all we get. But right now, what I'm seeing is this bearish indication on the 4 hour and on the daily, with no clear bullish indications over here outside of the multiple time frame bullish indication from 41.90 from yesterday, which was again another reason why we had the bullish bias coming into the open. And just ended up only pushing a few points, and then we got the sell-off. So there's that 4 hour, somewhat of a bearish case off the high here. And then on our 60-minute, just want to kind of zoom in here, get a look, and yeah, still same situation. I think we even had the bearish case yesterday off that high back there. Never mind. Yeah, so right before the open, so right around 5 a.m. yesterday, we did have a little bit of what could be argued as a bearish case as we pushed into the 7 a.m. candle. So at 5 a.m. when we were doing our pre-market analysis, we didn't have a bearish indication, but when we pushed up, and I guess that high was 28.25, and now it reminds me we had to break above 28.25 and stay above it for the bullish case. We broke above it by about 2 points and then sold off. When we broke above it, we got that bearish indication. And so a lot of time frames, once we started selling off from 42.30, were definitely giving us strong bearish signals. Now, when we look at the current lows, I'm just looking for any indications of some strong bullish signals here, and there's really not much. You could maybe make an argument here. It's not necessarily the most beautiful thing, but you do have basically a flattening out of RVI over here off the lows, but you do have this push down in RVI, right? So there's a little bit of a bullish case here that we can make off of the low at 91.50. So we want to keep that in mind. And then currently right now, really no signs of exhaustion on this attempt to push higher. We do want to keep in mind the overall retracement of this level and some of the key levels we have above us. But currently really no signs of exhaustion here. And then I did draw in a fib here of the whole leg. So from the May 19th low all the way to the high we just made, just to see if we have any interesting confluence of these levels. And what I do like is the swing low here is directly in line with the 50%. And you can see back in time that we did have a decent resistance and then a decent support. So there is something in the 50% area. But more so, I do like the 61.8 retracement coming right back into the critical prices here, the prediction points, the previous price action highs that have not been tested here around 14. And then you can even see nice support if we go all the way back to the beginning of May, right off of that general area. So some things to keep in mind if we do get some type of pullback here. And so I will wrap up the high time frames very quickly for you. The ultra high time frames, really no indications of exhaustion, but when we get to our daily, our 4 hour and our hourly, we do have the bearish indication off of that high at 42.30. So we'll see if our intermediate time frames agree. And remember, some mornings we're not going to have quite a confluence of signals, and that's okay. But the reason we're doing this type of analysis is to see if we do have an agreement on 4 or 5 different time frames to give us a clue of what could potentially happen. It won't line up every morning like that, but So again, off of that, let me jump to the 30 here. Off of that yesterday's high, definitely have that bearish indication. In fact, just before the open, we did talk about that 30-minute bearish indication yesterday in our pre-market, but then we said we had the bullish indication off the low, which gave us, again, that was 2175, the ultimate level we really didn't want to break for our bullish bias. That's where we had that indication for a continuation higher. Unfortunately, the bears jumped in there at 42.30 and, took us for a ride down. But right now, in the current area, I'm looking over here. Remember, on our hourly, we could make somewhat of a bullish case off the low at 41.91.50. I don't necessarily see that here. Yeah, there's really nothing there from the hourly perspective, and then from the 30-minute perspective, and then currently this high we're making at the moment really does not have any indication of exhaustion. Now, obviously, we pushed to 09 and pulled back to 04, so we do have a little bit of a 5-point sell-off from the high of that candle, but I don't have any clear bearish indication so far. And we did say on the 60-minute as well that as we pushed here, let me just look back really quick. Yeah, as we push, we don't necessarily have any signs of exhaustion at the current moment, at the current high. And so from our 4-hour, 1-hour, and 30-minute, we don't necessarily have indications that we're going to turn from this high here around 42.09. Outside of that, really nothing helping us out from a divergence perspective in this area right now. And so 30 minutes not really saying too much other than we could potentially see a continuation higher because there are no indications of exhaustion. So today's not necessarily the kind of day where we have that beautiful alignment in the stars for a clear picture. And that's perfectly fine because we have really good levels and our signals are on point. So we will definitely have plenty of opportunities to play this both ways. The 10-minute here, again, not necessarily any indications of exhaustion, although I could point out that we pushed to this higher high, but the indicator actually kind of pushed to a lower high there. So there was just a little indication of exhaustion. And so we are getting this pullback here from that 10-minute perspective. Don't necessarily see that on the 30-minute. So to this morning, it's just a little bit wishy-washy coming from where our standpoint and what we look for. But right now, let me just kind of take a look-see here and see where we are from the grander perspective. We do want to consider that we have the potential of a pullback because we do have the daily, the 4-hour, and the 60-minute, and if I recall correctly, the 30-minute, and then again the 10-minute. Let me pull the 10-minute over here. All those bearish indications from the high we made yesterday, right after the open, that little push up, and then we sold off. Every time frame gave us bearish indications from the high. But now that we're down over in this region, we don't necessarily have a lot of bullish indications from this low. So that could mean we have a continuation down. But basically, we're just going to have to play this morning because we don't have an alignment. We're going to have to just play it level by level. So let me pull up my 3-minute here. And we want to consider kind of these levels that we could potentially find some strong reactions from. And so this morning we do have kind of a lot going on right about here in the market around 02. So if we look back in time, I'll go ahead and mark this. Give me one moment. I think we're gonna... So right around 02 here, which is, I know I have 0350 in there, which was pretty reactive in the past. But this 02, you can see, I mean, amazing support and resistance. Look at that resistance there, support there, support to the tick there, resistance, support. Gets a little bit washy in some areas, but then again, lots of resistance in the market all across here. And so this O2 level I do think is going to be important if we pull back that far. And we have 98 and 95.50, which again, if you just look back, and we talked about this at the beginning of the pre-market, just some amazing support and resistance off of these very specific levels. So we're going to have to watch here. Again, you just go back in time and it's just like over and over resistance and support at these levels. So this morning we're going to look for clear signals off of the levels below, and then above, remember 14 quarter and 16, again, pretty important levels. You could argue 16 is not quite there as much compared to 14 quarter, but we do have those. That 1975, beautiful support that really has not come back. The price has not come back to test. And then that 22 quarter, which you can see how small that number is. This has been on the charts before I increased font size. So this has been on here for a very long time. And yet we came right up to it, found resistance yesterday, broke through, pulled back, found support directly off of it. So we want to keep in mind these levels this morning. It's not necessarily a beautiful kind of star alignment morning. And so remember, we had all the bearish indications off of 30. So if the market can push up and get above 30 and hold above it, then voila, all of those bearish indications are gone. And so we could see a potential push, but we want to keep in mind that there was a lot of bearish indications off 30, including on the daily, which is going to be a much stronger type of signal. And so we could potentially pull back, again, keeping in mind basically the previous daily low. So pretty much this morning, we don't have a clear bias, but if we can break and hold above 1075, 50% of the previous day, that will be a better case for the bulls. And then if we can break above the previous daily high, even better for the bulls. And then just 8 more points and we're at the all-time high. On the other end of it, 91.50, 91.75. I think the ultimate low from the overnight was 90.75. If we cannot hold above that and start breaking lower, then we're going to have much more of a bearish case, which I think I'm pretty much stating the obvious, but these are things we want to keep in mind. And then if we do start pulling back, I did go ahead and draw in some of these retracement levels for the larger leg. And if we do pull back, we do have a lot of support and resistance right around 41.80. I don't know if you can see on my cursor here all the way back. Pretty decent resistance at 79. Pretty decent coming all the way across. Broke it by maybe a few points, pulled back. And then support here from 41.80, pretty strong all the way across. So we do want to kind of keep, I don't know if I have anything labeled over there, but that 80 area is going to be interesting. So I'll go ahead and put this in 6, and we'll make this 70, 41.80 even. And then again, let's look back here and just look at some of these deeper retracements. So if 80 doesn't hold, where we had really good resistance and some support in the last few, maybe a week ago, if we can't get through that, we have some other interesting levels, that 50% at 42, and then ultimately the 61.8 retracement level back to the resistance right around 14 to 24. Let's call it a 10-point range here. Some interesting price action over here as well. Ideally we won't pull back that far this morning, but we'll have to just kind of roll with the punches and follow what the market is telling us.